so Prey is the new Predator film, but a refreshing change of pace for a Predator film. Mainly because this film is set in a much different setting with very different characters and a much different Predator. So there's a lot of switching up that's going on in this film, and it's probably one of the better Predator sequels, if you want to call it that. I don't know if you would call it like a sequel. Like, I guess it technically be a prequel because it takes place long before the events of the first Predator film. But however you want to dice it, this is a very solid film that I think gets to the core of what made the original Predator film work best, while at the same time changing stuff up and trying to find something new to explore with it. So it takes place in 1700s Great Plains, where you have a Comanche tribe that tries to live out in the woods, and among the tribe is Naru, played by Amber Midthunder. And Naru wants to kind of like prove herself as a warrior for her village. She's very skilled in medicine. Like, she fulfills kind of like the role that's been expected of her. Like, she's expert on how to treat wounds and how to like chill the body and, treat like fevers and stuff like that. But in her spare time, she also studies like, how to throw an axe, how to shoot a bow and arrow. And she's pretty skilled at it. She spends a lot of time working on this. But of course, her tribe only wants her to fulfill one role. So she wants, like, even like her brother Tabe, who kind of roots for her. She's he's like, okay, yeah, you're a great warrior too, but everyone else like doesn't feel like women should be warriors, so I'm just gonna go with the flow of it. She feels like she needs a moment to prove herself. Like, there's a rite of passage that she wants to undertake that will make her a successful hunter, and it feels like she almost gets it at one point, but then it's kind of like taken away from her by essentially not recognizing teamwork. So she needs something bigger that's going to help prove herself. And that something bigger happens to be when the Predator comes to town. This alien from another world who just comes to the woods to hunt big game. Starts off slow with snakes and then works its way up to bears. Now, the Predator, I love, like, the reveal of the alien Predator here. And it's mostly because, like, they make the smart call of always keeping the Predator concealed, like, building it up as, like, a mystery. You mostly see it in, like, the invisible camouflage, and then it slowly kind of comes more into view. That by the time you actually get to see the full-body Predator, it was a great redesign, I thought. Like, if you compare it to like 2018's The Predator, where it was just like this big bulky mask with like the giant red eyes and everything, there's something like very fitting about the way this Predator designed. Like, the helmet this time feels more like kind of like, it looks like very much like a kind of like a bone mask. Like, it's got like the laser tech that kind of like shoot all the arrows and stuff like that. But it has this very like naturalistic look where it feels like he could blend in a little bit with the Great Plains environment. That being said, once the helmet comes off, I really liked seeing how, like, they've definitely made the elongated jaw a lot bigger this time. Where it almost feels like, I almost feel cheated, where, like, there's never a moment where you get to see the Predator's giant mouth kind of open and just, like, devour an animal or something like that. I feel like that would have been, like, a missed opportunity there. That being said, the Predator does establish itself quite well as a threat. It's mostly seen in the woods and darkness and shadow and invisibility, and it slowly starts coming out to kill other members of like the Comanche tribe and later fur traders who they encounter as well. So, I mean, yeah, like the Predator itself is great, but I also want to like stress like how much I really dug the character of Naru. Like, Naru is not established as this very like egotistical character. Like, she's very much, she wants to be a part of her tribe, she wants to contribute, and she wants to be a team player. And even when she's kind of not seen as one, she's still trying to be a team player. Like, she sneaks away with the hunting tribe to kind of like work with them, and even when they don't and want to scoff at her, she still wants to do what's best and save as many people as she can. Now, of course, because this is the Predator story, she's not going to be able to save everyone, but she does her best, and she also recognizes that she gets as far as she does because she gets help from others. A help that she initially gave and wasn't respected, and here she's kind of using that respect, her own respect, I guess, to take the teamwork that's available and eventually defeat this predator and ultimately protect her tribe, which is like the bigger thing. Like, it never feels like it's an egotistical thing where it's just Naru just wants to be a badass warrior. I mean, she is, but it's not like that's her main drive. Her main drive is she wants to be a protector. She wants to help people, which is a pretty noble goal. So you really are rooting for her to survive this very versatile predator that has a lot of weapons at its disposal. You get to see a lot of cool kills, especially once they encounter the fur traders. Like, it's one of those things where it's like they encounter the French fur traders, and like they're the enemies for a while until the predator shows up, and then it's kind of like, you know, like the French fur traders are basically like the highest body count for the predator in this film. So you get a lot of cool kills with them. You get a lot of decapitations and amputations, cool scenes of like the arrows going through people's eyes and stuff like that, and chopping people up. There's a lot of great dark humorous moments, like where like where the predator has like this perfect shield that can ricochet bullets, and one bullet perfectly ricochets into like one of the other French hunters, which is so satisfying to see moments like that, where it's like, ooh, there's a lot of like bone crunching, gory moments that are surprisingly fun, because you kind of want that out of a Predator film, because like it's weird, like this is a film that like it's very much the same story as the first Predator, where it's just like, you know, alien comes to Earth, a whole bunch of people got to stop this predator, and only, you know, kind of one person ends up living here. A little bit more closer to horror here, because you have a little bit of like the final girl trope. But yeah, it's essentially the same story, right down to the cleverness of trying to conceal your body heat once Naru figures that out, and then uses a lot more of her smarts in that area with like a little bit of like the foreshadowing. And I guess that's kind of like the almost like a little bit of like a weakness of the film, is that it's relying on the same Predator format, which I think is almost a little bit too safe, just because it's basically the same flow, I would say, of like the first Predator film. It's definitely not the same setting or the same tone, because there's definitely more of a darker, humorous edge when you get to a lot more of like the violent climax. There's a bigger sense of like sacrifice, I think, too, with a few of the characters, and I feel like it has a much different tone by the end of the film as opposed to like to the first Predator film. So it's weird. Like, this is a film that's both like, it's safe but also experimental at the same time, because like a lot of people have noted, like, you know, you have the main characters who like are Native Americans. You have the Comanche dub of the film, which I have not watched it. I've been told it's great, and I want to check it out eventually. Especially since, like, you know, like a few characters will just casually speak Comanche a few times in the film. But just like the way it's set up, like I love the way it's shot too. Like, you have like great moments of like focusing on the close-ups when you need them for like the axe hitting the tree, and there's never a moment where like you don't know where these characters are within like the wilderness. You always know where they are and where the predator is at every moment here, which is great for a film where, you know, like you're shooting on like these like vast landscapes of like mountains and woods and swampy, muddy ranges and stuff like that, that it can be easy to just be lost and just forget where characters are. And it never feels like there's a moment like that. It always feels like it's very much focused. There's never just like a smeary blur of action. Although, as some people have pointed out, yeah, there are some like moments where the special effects could be a lot better. The sequence where the predator fights a bear definitely could have been handled a lot better, just because we see a lot of close-ups of it, and it kind of reveals how obvious the bear is CGI in that scene. That being said, I did like a lot of the practical effects with the predator here. I did see a few of the behind-the-scenes moments with the full-bodied predator suit, which is really cool. So it's great to finally have like a Predator film where it's like you're not lowering your expectations. It's felt like for the last like like 20 to 30 years or so that you've always been having to like, you know, have a very like tepid interpretation of like the Predator films. There's kind of like, okay, It's another Predator film. Just got to lower the bar, lower it, because like it's probably not going to get better. I felt that way about 2018's The Predator. It is not a good film, and it's just trying to be like a straight up goofy film, and I almost kind of dug it on that. It looks like, okay, look, you're never gonna match the first Predator film, so just whatever, go goofy. It's like Shane Black wants to do some crazy stuff with it, whatever. But here, actually feels like it's refreshing. Like it feels like it's going back to the roots of what made Predator great, but also kind of tinkering with the formula and trying to see what else works. I will say I did like how this film has gotten people's like creative cells flowing and thinking about, oh, what other time periods could you insert the Predator into? I mean, it's pretty boundless. I mean, I feel like with this format, it could get like tedious after a while if it's the same story over and over. I would honestly like to see a film where the Predator wins. We're just like, just thrown back further in time where like the humans try their best but ultimately end up losing to it, just to switch it up a bit, because this, like I said, this is more or less the same story as like the first Predator film, which isn't a terrible thing. It's a fairly safe thing. But I think if you want to keep going with this, I think you need a little bit more than just like scenery change here. Like for what this film set out to be, within this setting and having centering around like a Comanche tribe, it works really well in its own right. There's never a moment where you're just kind of like, oh, okay, it's going through the motions of Predator. Even for moments where like they're literally just making Predator references, just small little wink ones, like like if it bleeds we can kill it, little lines like that, which I think are fine. I think they're fine if everything else is working and you're not just thinking about the original film. That's great. If they want to do that, you can have your winking too. I'm just saying, if you're going to do more Predator films, which they might, switch up the story a little bit, because I don't just want the future Predator to just be historical like costume changes for the series. I feel like there's a little bit more you could do with it, but this film as it is, I really love Prey.